The Mariners are not just in the playoffs, but they just won a playoff game. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Mariners post-game show. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I got to tell you, that intro has never hit harder than it just did. It is Friday, October 7th, 2022. It is a victory Friday, folks. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, or post-game show, rather. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description below. Colby, I'm not even going to list what we're going to talk about today because y'all know what we're talking about today. This is why you trade for Luis Castillo. And now I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I literally just got back from Toronto, like not even 5 minutes ago I walked into the door. So I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't have any of that in front of me. And that's where you're going to fill in the blanks, Colby, on this show. But well, hopefully. I mean, I have some questions that I want to ask you about the broadcast and about the umpiring and stuff like that, because stuff that I couldn't really understand from the 500 level. But my God, I just watched the Seattle Mariners play in a playoff game and win that playoff game and shut out one of the most daunting offenses in all of Major League Baseball. And I still haven't properly processed it, but this again is why you trade for Luis Castillo. Luis Castillo shoved today. There was one part, I think it was in the first or second inning or so, and I gotta give a shout out to Jage at the Jage page on Twitter. You gotta follow him. We went to the game together. It was an incredible time, and I'll get more into our experience at the ballpark later, but there was a point in the first or second inning where we saw Luis Castillo hit 99.9 miles per hour on the gun. And at that point, we're like, it's over. Mariners are winning this game. Dude's just out of his mind right now. Did it look like that on TV, Colby?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's they round up on TV, so there's quite a few 100-mile-per-hour fastballs that were popping, and it was the run too. It wasn't just 100 down the pipe. It was 100 with arm side run. It was 100 with some rise to it. It was 98 with some devastating sink to it. And the Blue Jays didn't have a chance. And the Blue Jays are a very good fastball hitting team. And Luis Castillo basically flipped off the stats and said, "I don't care. You can't hit my fastball," and they couldn't. I mean, just utter domination. Ty, do you realize that he retired the leadoff man in 7 of the 8 innings that he started? And the one time he didn't, 2 pitches later, he got a double play ball.
Yes.
He did not allow any traffic. He didn't allow any momentum to build. He never gave the Blue Jays a chance to respond, because every single time he went out there, he was 1 pitch away from ending the inning because the leadoff guy never got on. They didn't put a guy on third base until there was 2 outs in the 9th. And the only reason that happened is because of a pass ball by Cal Raleigh. So it was just total domination. The only thing the Blue Jays did well is they got him out of there after the 7th, or after the first out in the 8th. That's it. Mm-hmm. They got his pitch count up just enough. And honestly, if he hadn't plunked Springer, he was going to go. He was going to go to the 8th, and that would have been that. So it was just utter domination. I mean, the sinker, the 2-seamer, the 4-seamer, it was all great. Everything worked off of that. And he didn't even throw that many changeups or sliders because why would he? Like, they couldn't touch his fastball. It was 7 1/3, 6 hits, 5 strikeouts. Just so much weak. I believe they had 4 hard hit balls off of Castillo all day. It was just total domination. It's the best start by a Seattle Mariners pitcher in their postseason history, which granted isn't large, but we're talking about a franchise that did have Randy Johnson in his prime, making starts in the playoff, and Castillo's was by far the best in franchise history.
And, of course, keep in mind that the Mariners are now undefeated in the postseason over the last 21 years. Like, let's just, let's
They've
make
also
that
have
known.
they also have a 21-year shutout streak in
Exactly.
the postseason.
Of course,
So
yes. Um, I still haven't processed what I just watched as a whole. I'm still like just kind of mind blowing because, you guys know how I was feeling going into the series, that whatever happens. Like I had made peace with that, and part of that was expecting that this Blue Jays team, with the offensive firepower that it has, was going to put up runs. The fact that Luis Castillo and Andres Munoz were able to combine to shut out this offense, it's remarkable. It's something that I did not expect to see at all in this series. Even if the Mariners were going to be able to keep things close and keep things to low scores, as they have done throughout this entire year, I didn't think it was possible to keep this team to a goose egg on the scoreboard. It's ridiculous. It's an absolute remarkable feat for this team to accomplish here. And I mean, again, I'm gonna say it time and time again. This is exactly why you trade for Luis Castillo. I was saying time and time again to Jage as we were watching the game together at that ballpark, and saying, I don't care at all about Noah Marte. I don't care at all about Edwin Arroyo. I don't care about any of that. Luis Castillo is a Seattle Mariner, and he's ours for the next 5+ years. And this is exactly why you have him, is to go toe to toe with Alek Manoah and all these guys that he's going to end up facing in this postseason. Because I really do think, especially after watching tonight, this team is going to advance, and they are going to make a run here in the postseason because they look the part. They look so primed to make a run here. Right. After finally, because I didn't know what kind of team we were going to see tonight. I didn't know if this team was going to look like the moment was just too big for them, or if, it was just kind of just, business as usual. And it was business as usual and then some for this team. It looked like they had been here many a times before. And it's so impressive. It's so impressive the job that Scott Service has done. It's so impressive the job that these players have done to get mentally prepared for this moment. Andres Munoz holding a 4-run lead. He's a young pitcher who has never pitched in a spot like this, in a hostile crowd. And we'll talk about the crowd in a little bit, because I do want to acknowledge that. But in a hostile environment, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's so, like, I know it seems so kind of blasé or whatever, talking about this, but this, like, being able to not let the moment get too big it's a huge deal for this team, for such a young team. And we'll see if that continues, but tonight it was just, I was taken back by it, by how just well put together this team was and how ready for this moment they were. It makes me so much more confident in terms of what they can do the rest of the way here, because this is a dangerous team. This is a really dangerous team, and this is probably, if it's not going to be the most hostile environment they find themselves in October, it's certainly one of the most. And there's very few environments that really rival this. And it's so, I mean, again, and I know I'm kind of like all over the place right now, but like it's so impressive. It really is just so incredibly impressive what this team was able to do tonight, and the momentum that it builds for them. And the fact that, look, even if they still get eliminated, at least they get Sunday. At least they get one more game. At least they give themselves a buffer that if tomorrow doesn't go as well for them, that at least they get one more crack at it.
They still have the advantage, right? Because they can make decisions knowing that they have Sunday. Toronto has to make decisions knowing that this is it. So they have to be more aggressive with their bullpen, and they had to use their bullpen a lot. Now, nobody threw a ton of pitches out of their bullpen, but they did use a lot of arms today. The Mariners
Trevor
used two.
Richards, Zach Pop, Tim
Simber.
Miza, Simba, Adam Simber. Like they used, I believe, 5 relievers tonight. That's a huge deal. That is a massive deal in this series. When again, it's best of 3, you're gonna need your bullpen at its best. The Mariners, meanwhile, only had to use Andres Munoz. They had Paul Sewald warming up at one point, but didn't use him. They end up using Munoz, who gets the 4-out save. And I mean, that just 5-out save. Apologies. Yeah. And that sets them up so perfectly for the next 2 days.
Yes, because what we need to remember is that Marco did a great job on Wednesday of going 7 innings, and the team only had to use Swanson and Sewald that day. So even Swanson and Sewald, who were the last relievers used, not counting Munoz, they haven't pitched since Wednesday, and everybody else in that bullpen hasn't pitched since Tuesday. So everybody but Munoz is incredibly well rested, and Munoz only threw 22 pitches to get the 5 outs. I'm guessing they would like to stay away from him tomorrow just because they've been very cautious with him. But this is the playoffs. If it's 3-2 and Vladdy Jr.'s up with, you're up by 1 and the tying runs at second, they're going to use Andres Munoz in that situation. There's nobody in the Mariners bullpen who's unavailable tomorrow, which is good because maybe you need to have a quick hook with Robbie Ray. Maybe you don't. We'll see. We should know pretty early on what Robbie Ray you're going to get. But you have that ability. Whereas if, Gausman goes out there and he throws 30 pitches and gives up, a run and strands the bases loaded in the first inning, Toronto has to think about taking him out and using a bullpen that's tired because they cannot afford to wait for him to figure it out. Seattle, while you don't want to go into the game saying like we have one in our back pocket, like you want to end the series in 2. You absolutely do. But if it doesn't look like it's going to go that way, you can absolutely kick this game, and you can, if you're down 4-2 or whatever, and Gausman shoving, and I guess we'll just use Matt Boyd for 2 innings, and we'll save Munoz and see what you're in winning this game sets you up so beautifully. And I think what's interesting about this game is that it was kind of the perfect Mariners game, right? They got the big home run, right? They added on, Gino contributed, Mitch Haniger contributed, Ty France contributed, and those 3 guys we talked about, like if there is 0, you can't win. They all contributed something today. And I think, obviously the Castillo and Munoz steal the headlines, rightfully so. But Seattle played excellent defense. It wasn't a huge strikeout day. I believe Toronto only struck out 7 times. Seattle just played excellent defense. And actually, I think there are 3 plays that maybe we're not talking about enough, but maybe that's a good segue into the next segment.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, because I am definitely not in a state that is well equipped to segue. So we'll get to that in just a moment, but real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your #1 source for football betting info this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. And you are listening to the Locked On Mariners post-game show after the Mariners 4-0 win over the Toronto Blue Jays in Game 1 of the American League Wild Card Series. I just realized that my voice is very raspy right now. I have kind of lost my voice. And before I get into my whole ballpark experience, because there are some stories, there are some takes that I have to go off of that. Let's get to your 3 plays that you think stood out the most here for the Mariners in helping them win this game.
Yeah, they stand out to me because they're not box score like stats, right? They're not something that you just see on the box score, but they all played crucial roles. And I think, the Mariners, it looked like they played very boring defense today. They didn't have to make any incredible plays. It was just that good. Everything was softly hit. There was nothing like incredible that happened, but I think 3 plays, 2 of them happened in the same inning. There is, I believe it's 2 outs in the 3rd, it might've been. And George Springer hits a ball into right field. Mitch Haniger sprints over, cuts it off, makes a good strong throw back into second base, holds Springer to a single. Next up, Bo Bichette, ground ball, hard hit ground ball in the hole. JP dives, able to keep it in front of him, knowing he has no shot to get Bichette. Once he left his feet, he knew that Bichette had an infield single. But that's critical because it keeps Springer at second. So now the Mariners defense has prevented a double, and it has prevented Springer going from first to third. Without those plays, it's entirely possible you have Vlad Jr. up with runners on the corner, 2 outs, and it's still 3-0 at that point. Anything can happen. The momentum builds. But those 2 plays, again, just saving 90 feet where you can. They aren't going to end up in the highlight reel. Nobody's going to talk about them. But you save those 90 feet, and those really start to add up. And then the other one is actually in the second inning, the double play that the Mariners turn. That is not an easy ball for Gino. He got kind of an in-between hop. It was a tricky little throw as well. He makes it. The Mariners turn 2. And the leadoff man did not reach for the remainder of this game for the Blue Jays. Those 3 plays, they don't show up. They're not going to end up on highlight reels. But again, you save 90 feet with Haniger's arm. You save 90 feet with JP's defense. You turn 2 on a ball that honestly eats up a lot of third basemen. And all of a sudden then you're talking about runners on first and second with nobody out in the second inning. And it's still just 3-0. So those 3 plays, they all save. They don't save runs, right? I mean, we can't say they definitely saved runs, but they save bases. They take away opportunity. They save 90s, and those add up over the course of a game where when you're talking about Castillo, it's going to be very difficult to bunch 3 hits against Castillo together. So saving that and making the Blue Jays earn every single base, it's going to be incredibly tough for any team to beat you. And those 3 plays stand out as plays that maybe other teams don't make those plays. And it changes the way that somebody like Castillo has to pitch with a guy on third as opposed to a guy on second. So I think those 3 plays add up to value. I don't think that anybody's really going to remember those. Like, we're going to talk about the Cal Raleigh home run and how great Castillo was, and rightfully so. Those absolutely should be the talking points. But those are the little things that the World Series title teams do. That's what the Braves do when they win the World Series. They pitch and they play that little tiny bit of defense that kind of goes unnoticed because it's not sexy, but all those things add up, and that's what good teams do. And that's how good teams like the Mariners can beat great teams like the Houston Astros and possibly the Toronto Blue Jays.
Mm-hmm. So, we've talked about, in the build-up series about how things can snowball at the Rogers Center. We all know about the Jose Bautista home run and everything that led up to that moment. And we know about the Zach Britton game as it's known, where Baltimore didn't use Zach Britton, used Ubaldo Jimenez instead, and how that kind of build up as well. But really, I'm going to say this, and I know that we're going to have some Blue Jays fans that tune in here because we did yesterday for our preview. The energy just wasn't there today in the Rogers Center. It did not feel there was not a single moment in which I felt like I was at an actual playoff game today. Just going off of the energy in that building, the atmosphere, it was not at all what I expected. And I don't think that this is going to continue over the weekend, but it is weird to me that, it's a 4:00 start, in Toronto. That's an hour before, the end of the workday and all that stuff. But again, it's also a Friday. That's the end of the work week. You're telling me that you couldn't get an hour or 2, earlier off to go to the game? Whatever. There were a lot of empty seats, especially in the 500 level. And there were even empty seats in the 100 level all around the ballpark, whether it was the outfield, especially the first baseline. There was a whole section of seats that was just empty. It was stunning considering what we know about playoff baseball in Toronto and just the atmosphere in general and the reputation that it has built for itself. It was just not at all what I expected. You had DM'd me during the game saying, like, it sounds quiet. And, I had tweeted on my way to the game, I only saw a couple of Blue Jays fans on the train. And I come from a town about 40 minutes outside of Toronto called Oakville. And so getting on the train, I saw more Yankees hats than I saw Blue Jays hats. And I'm not even exaggerating about that. It was more Yankees hats than Blue Jays hats. And that's not typical. I got on the train about 3.5 hours before first pitch. And I've gone to a lot of Blue Jays games. I've seen more Blue Jays fans on the train around that time, about that amount of time before first pitch, on a random Wednesday in the middle of July or August than I did today. And yeah, there were a lot of people at the stadium once I got there. It was packed, but it wasn't what you would think a playoff series would be. It wasn't like, there wasn't that excitement. There wasn't that buzz. It just didn't really feel like I was at a playoff game. It didn't really feel like this fan base, which hasn't seen playoff baseball in its home stadium for the last 6 or so years. It didn't really feel like they wanted it. Like as cheesy as that sounds, right? And as simple as that sounds, it really didn't feel like this fan base wanted it. And, you know, they got excited when they got their little bloop single or whatever, but it was also like, you're down 3-0. You know, you're getting hype over a little bloop single with 2 outs, you know, and you're down 3-0. Like, come on. Like, it was just, I don't know. And then the Blue Jays made the mistake of having Mariners legend Edwin Encarnacion throughout the first pitch of this game. I don't know, Colby, but I don't know if I would let a guy who played for the opposition at one point in his career throughout the first pitch in that game. No matter how much of an organizational legend he is, the fact that he played a few months for the team that you're going up against, I don't know if I would do that, personally speaking. So the whole vibe was off at the stadium. The whole vibe was off. I thought that I was going to be a nervous wreck at the stadium today. I didn't feel anxious at all. Going on the train, going to the stadium, I just felt like I was at a normal baseball game in the middle of May. Like, I didn't feel like I was at a playoff game.
Well, we'll see how it looks tomorrow. I imagine, you know, backs against the wall. It'll be a little more fervent. And according to ESPN, you know, there was 47,000 people there in a stadium that apparently is around 50,000. So
53. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, there were people there. Like you said, it was crowded, but it just lacked energy. And I do wonder how much of that is, obviously, you know, there's going to be a few empty seats, people buy tickets and don't show up, yada, yada, whatever. But aside from that, like, I wonder how much of that is just Manoah struggled so much in the first, and then Castillo so dominant early on that you just kind of, you know, I think Mariner fans, we're kind of experts at this. You just look at it and you go, there's no way. like we just can't touch this guy. And so, you know, maybe we can get lucky and scratch out 1 or 2, but we're not getting 3 or 4, not against this guy. Mm-hmm. I do like to think, though, that there was some Blue Jays fans, and I'm sure there were quite a few of them, who they don't know anything about the Mariners. I mean, why they don't watch the Mariners, right? It's not their team. But I do wonder if there was maybe a lot of Blue Jay fans who, like, Castillo came out of the game and they were like, oh, here's our chance. We finally got that guy out of the game. And Mariner fans are sitting there like, no, that's not going to go the way you think it's going to go. In fact, I was browsing some.
Did you know that Andres Munoz threw a 94 mile per hour slider in this game?
Yeah.
Serious?
Yeah, I was browsing some Blue Jays Reddit, and I saw somebody, a Blue Jays fan, mention, like, he was like, hold on, he's got a 103 mile an hour fastball and a 93 mile per hour slider. That's not fair. And it's like, yeah, I mean, welcome to the American League, buddy. I don't know what to tell you. So yeah, I do like to think that, you know, there was a Blue Jays fan who, like, had hope, like, all right, we got a guy on base. We finally got Castillo out of there. Get to this Mariners bullpen. We're going to cut the lead and we're going to win in the 9th. And then they watch Munoz come up and throw his first fastball to Vlad Jr. at 103 with arm side run, and was just like, what?
Yeah.
Like, how do you hit that? And there's a funny video going around of Vlad's reaction to the fastball, and he just sitting there going, and he mouthed the word I'm not allowed. I'm not sure we're allowed to say. So you guys can find the video of that. But he was impressed. So yeah, I just wonder
Yeah.
how much of that energy is just because the Mariners just took it from them, and they never really
Hmm.
gave them an opportunity. Like I said, I think they had 3 guys in scoring position all game, and all 3 of them were with 2 outs.
Yeah. And so I want to reiterate that I think that's going to change the energy in
Yeah.
the building over the weekend. And
Yep.
we'll see if we get to Sunday, but I think tomorrow is going to be a lot busier, a lot more hectic, a lot more crazy in there, and I think that's going to be a lot more in line with what we know the Toronto fan base to be.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
just
yeah.
weird though. It was just weird though today. Like, considering, because again, it's 4 o'clock first pitch, but it's the end of the work week. I get that it's in the middle of a Friday, but still, it's the end of the work week. I
Do you
feel
think?
like that was a situation in which like brokers had bought a bunch of tickets and it was just too expensive for people to buy. Like it was
Yeah.
just like, especially that section in the 100 level that
Oh, yeah.
I was describing, where it was literally like 3 rows of like, I got to say at least like 30 seats that were just empty, all in a bunch.
Yeah. I wonder, if because it was weird. It was the Mariners who played loose, and like it was the Mariners who looked like they were having a lot of fun. And again, part of that is when you have a dominant pitcher. Like I said, I don't want to overstate this because Castillo was that good. Like he was so good that you can literally suck the life out of the entire stadium, which he did. So I don't want to oversell this and say, the Blue Jays are playing with so much pressure today, or it felt like they were the team that had the 21-year playoff drought and they're the team that doesn't have any playoff experience and all that stuff. But it felt like that. And I want to say that was mostly Castillo, that he was just that good. And Manoah struggled. Manoah was their guy. So I expect Toronto to show up tomorrow. It's not an easy matchup for Robbie Ray. But I do think that maybe I saw a lot of Mariner fans who were like, oh, we should start Logan Gilbert tomorrow because Ray's been terrible and Gossman's been so good. I want to pump the brakes on that. Gossman has not been very good since really June. Since the last time the Mariners saw him, Kevin Gossman has kind of regressed, I guess is I
Well,
pulled
yeah,
the
because
stats here.
I think he was
Cy
scoring,
Young favorite.
and obviously ERA isn't the be all end all, but like I believe the last time that we saw Kevin Gossman, he was running an ERA sub 2, and now he's like at 3.35. So something has happened, right?
Yeah, it's so over his last 19 starts, which I think dates back to June 12th, I think. Um, he opponents are hitting over his last 19 starts. Again, not a small sample size. His opponents are hitting 277, 307, 433, and he's posted just a 3.81 ERA. Now, his FIP is much lower than that. His FIP is sub 3, mostly because he's not walking guys. If opponents are hitting 277, but their on base is only 307, you're not walking anybody, and the numbers bear that out. Gossman is still going to strike guys out, and he's still going to throw a ton of strikes, but he's been in the zone more. A 277 average in 2022 is not good. And I think when you look at what Ray has done in roughly the same time period, Ray's been better than Gossman. And it gets
Yeah.
skewed because, Ray had that really terrible start last time out. And I get it. Like, Ray hasn't been great down the stretch either. But I just feel like there's a lot of Mariner fans who believe that, tomorrow's game is like a clear advantage to the Blue Jays. And I don't agree. I think this is a pretty even
Yeah.
pitching matchup. And I thought today was going to be a pretty even pitching matchup, but at the end of the day, Manoah didn't have it early, and the Mariners took advantage. And
I guess
basically,
he had
Castillo
too
never
much
lost
pressure
it.
in his. I guess he had too much pressure in his tires. Yeah.
Yes, he is the tire joke.
Yeah.
That guy's dumb. That guy's dumb. But yeah, so I don't think tomorrow is an unwinnable game because of the pitching matchup. And if you get to a game 3, you hope you don't, but if you do, Gilbert versus Stripling, I feel like
Yeah.
that's, a pretty good toss
With
up. So,
Kirby as a backup too. Like,
right.
yeah.
And, a bullpen that is still remarkably fresh right now. So the Mariners have a huge advantage coming into this weekend. It will not be easy. There is no such thing as easy in the playoffs. Toronto is a very good team with a very good offense. And it only takes one game. Ray goes out there and implodes, and you got to kind of run through the bullpen gambit. Then all of a sudden we're back to all square on Sunday, and anything can happen in an elimination game. You want to avoid those at all costs.
Yeah.
But the Blue Jays have to play 2 of those in a row. So again, everything favors Seattle, at least just, just logistically, everything favors Seattle right now. But they still have to go out. They have to execute. The series is not over by any stretch. I don't think you'll find a single Mariner fan who is sitting here saying, "Oh, yep, we got this done." Like, let's start setting up the lineup or the rotation for Houston now. Like, nobody's saying that, but the Mariners are in a good position. And if the Blue Jays had won this game, we'd be saying the same thing on the opposite side, where like the Mariners can win the series still, but it's going to be very tough. And so that's why in these 3-game series, winning game 1 is so crucial to this team, and particularly from the Mariners, who are great at playing from ahead.
And I mean, think about the storylines going into this game. The guy that the Mariners wanted in this winter, Kevin Gausman, against the guy that they ended up getting, Robbie Ray, who used to pitch for the Blue Jays. Kevin Gausman was the replacement for Robbie Ray in Toronto, going up against one another in an elimination game. What else could you want? What else could you possibly want from a storyline perspective? This is peak content. This is peak content as far as baseball, as far as playoff baseball goes.
I really feel like this is the best series we're going to get this weekend.
Because
these two teams are so incredibly well matched up, and they both have, great pitching, starting pitching at least, and they have, young stars, and it's a fun series. I hope it only goes 2 games. I hope we're on here tomorrow, roughly the same time. And we're just like, hey man, we're on to Houston, and we're going to get to see Gilbert go game 1 against Verlander, and we're definitely going to get playoff baseball back to Seattle. We're going to get at least 1 game and all that fun stuff. Maybe I have tickets to that. I don't know, but like it's I hope that's what we're saying. But again, I'm still at the point where nothing would surprise me. The Mariners could win 7-0 tomorrow. They could lose 12-0. They could lose 2-1. And then they can go on Sunday. And again, in an elimination game, literally anything can happen. You want to avoid those at all costs, because they are so crazy and hectic that it doesn't matter how big of an advantage you think you have. You don't. It's an elimination game. It's one baseball game to determine the season. That's not the way baseball is meant to be played, but it is. Yeah. It does create some incredible content. That's for sure.
It's going to be a wonderful game tomorrow. Just again from the storylines and everything, and hopefully at the end of it, the Mariners come out of it with their first playoff series win in 21 years. I just got to say real quick though that I'm so grateful that I get this opportunity to see this in person. I leaving the ballpark today, and like I hid my hat in my bag because things were getting a little hostile there in the first inning. I popped off when Gino hit his RBI. When he hit his RBI, I got told to shut the F up and sit the F down. And so from that point forward, I was like, okay. Yep, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna be quiet about this. I don't want to end up on baseball fights on Twitter. I don't,
Ask him ask him what pick the Leafs are gonna have in April.
Exactly. Thank you. But
you guys pick the top 5 next year.
I'm down to throw hands, but I would prefer not to, personally speaking, especially over baseball, But yeah. All right. So I want to ask you before we hop off of here, because I'm up in the 500 level. I'm not really seeing everything, but I did look on Twitter and saw that Lance Barrett was being Lance Barrett behind the plate.
He was terrible.
So get me up to speed here. I want to know everything. What was going on with Lance Barrett tonight?
He was so bad. He was giving Manoah regularly about 3 inches off the outside corner. Like, not even joking. And the worst part is that he was rewarding Kirk for terrible frame jobs. Kirk's glove would just like crank all the way instead of the subtle just kind of move it in. No, he's whoosh, like a little leaguer would, and he's like, oh yeah, that's a strike. And you're sitting there what are you doing, man? You're not even rewarding a good frame job or anything like that. And of course, then the broadcast had to be like, oh, that's Kirk. He's such a good framer. It's that's not what that is. That's an umpire who's terrible. And Kirk is a good framer. I'm not taking that away from him, but By the way, broadcast, I thought was pretty good.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was
Yes.
going to ask you about that as well, because it was Dave Fleming, Tim Kirkshin, Jessica Mendoza, and I think one other person, right?
Yeah, they didn't go to him much, the sideline guy or whatever. They
Okay.
did interviews with the managers in like the third and the fourth, but I think that was about it. Like, and then they cut to him a few times to talk about the watch party in Seattle. Apparently there was 4,000 people there at T-Mobile watching the game on the 90-foot screen. So, but no, I thought the broadcast crew was really good. Jessica Mendoza talking about hitting is really cool. She knows her stuff. Kirkshin, of course, just coming in with like the weird stats and like the funny, the funny stories and all that stuff. And then I thought Fleming, kind of navigated the whole thing very well. So I actually thought the broadcast crew was very good. Lance Barrett was terrible. Castillo got squeezed a few times at the bottom of the zone. Manoah got everything. And the fact that his control was still that bad, like it was not a good night for Alek Manoah. I'll say that. But yeah, overall, I thought, the broadcast crew was really good. Barrett was really bad. And it was a good production overall, I would say. So like same crew tomorrow. So, we'll see how it goes, but I thought it was very good. Also I learned something new from Kirkshin. I don't know if you know this, Ty, but Cal Raleigh is the first player in Major League history to hit a pinch hit walk-off home run to clinch a playoff spot for his team.
Wow.
Nobody had ever done that before.
Wow.
According to Kirkshin. I was really nobody? No,
actually,
not to clinch a playoff spot.
I think ESPN tweeted that out when it happened. I think maybe I saw that. Yeah, that's crazy.
In the long history of baseball, nobody ever hit a walk-off dinger as a pinch hitter to send his team to the playoffs.
Real quick, that for Big Dumper, a 2-run home run in the Mariners' first playoff game after clinching the playoffs, after ending the drought for the Mariners. Cal Raleigh is a star for this team. He is awesome. I'm such a huge fan. All he does is hit dingers. He also struck out at least once tonight, and that was not great.
There was there was some controversy on one of the strikeouts because he had walked on the pitch before. It was like 4 inches outside, and then of course he chased the changeup after.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it's the Big Dumper thing's really taken off. Apparently, Scott left the podium because they do pressers in the press room now instead of in the clubhouse. And as he was walking out, he saw Cal Raleigh coming in to do his presser, and apparently he yelled "Big Dumper in the house" as he walked out of the room. So Scott's feeling good about his team right now.
I'm feeling great about the team as well.
They're having fun, man. They're having a lot of fun. So and that's good. At no point Scott has done a great job. At no point did the spotlight look too big for anybody on this team. They just kind of showed up and did what they did, and it worked out great. So again, I hope it continues. We'll see. Tomorrow's game to me is a real toss-up. Toronto's got to fight with everything they have because when you're facing elimination,
Colby, we're kicking their ass tomorrow. We're kicking their ass.
Okay.
We're kicking their ass.
Hopefully we don't have to bleep those. I didn't read the updated list. Yeah, like I said, I like our chances to win the series still. Tomorrow we'll see. Love to avoid playing on Sunday, and I think Gossman's more hittable than people realize. So worth noting real fast before we go, Scott did basically say that the lineup would look, I don't know, he didn't say a lot different, but he did say there will be changes to tomorrow's lineup because some of the moves they made today were just strictly because Manoah was on the mound, like moving Cal Raleigh to the cleanup spot, I think is what he was mostly talking about. So I suspect we'll see Haniger back in the top 4. Please no, but
he did not have a very good game tonight.
He got the double,
yeah, that's right.
He got the double.
Yeah,
I like him hitting 5. I think he makes sense 5 behind Cal with the way Cal's swinging it right now. So we'll see what the lineup looks like tomorrow.
Also, I'm sorry about playoff Jared. It didn't happen tonight, but maybe I'll get redeemed tomorrow.
It's not looking great, buddy. It's not looking great.
It wasn't great tonight.
No, it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe we'll see Demo in the lineup tomorrow. I think it's possible. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a strict platoon with those guys. They're going to go based off a matchup. I don't have Demo's numbers in front of me. If Demo can hit a changeup / splitter pretty well, then he's probably going to be in the lineup because that's Gossman's whole shtick. So we'll see. There were some people wondering why Demo didn't hit against the lefty, Mayazo or whatever his name is.
Yeah. Meza when he came
Yeah,
in. Yeah.
that was, if it was a one run game, or if they probably would have, but you want to save that guy for late because you don't have Haggerty to run. You might need him to run later.
You're up 4-zip. Kelnick's a better defender in the outfield. Yeah. I was totally fine with them doing that.
Yeah, maybe you could hit him for Frazier, but again, is it that big of a defensive upgrade? Not really. And don't you want somebody to run late? Like if they tie it up or whatever and France gets a double, don't you want Demo to be available to run? Because you really don't have any other options to run on your bench, because unfortunately due to the Haggerty injury. So we'll see what happens with all that. But I thought Scott managed very well, and he took Castillo out at the appropriate time. He stuck with Munoz for 5. He let his guys play, and they got a lead, and he didn't have to make any other small ball decisions. So I thought Scott played this one very well as well.
This was probably the easiest episode of Locked On Mariners we've ever done. This was awesome. I am so excited. I'm ready to go win a playoff series tomorrow. I need to go to sleep though. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We're gonna get this up for you, and I'm gonna hit the hay and get back at it tomorrow. But I'm so glad that things went the way that it did tonight. I had an absolute blast at the ballpark, and I'm looking so forward to tomorrow. I'm so excited. I wish that I was there right now. So I hope you guys enjoy the game tomorrow on TV, and let's get this thing back to you guys. Let's hand this thing back off to you guys, and let's get playoff baseball back in the city of Seattle. Let's do that tomorrow. So that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, the CANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen after the game. Now make your second listen the Locked On MLB podcast. MLB expert Paul Francis Sullivan brings humor, passion, and unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB, on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts, just like us. And with that, have yourself a beautiful baseball day and a beautiful baseball night, and we will see you tomorrow after the game. Peace.